This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for therapy. If you are experiencing mental distress, please seek professional help.
And I hope that you will remember me well, 'cause I'm really not sure if it's heaven or hell. And you never could stomach stories we tell. And now can't spare the water for a wish from the well. We are all simple miracles. We are all simple miracles.
Welcome to the Wellness Project Podcast. I am your host, Wilson. Each episode aims to bring mental health awareness through exploring psychoeducation, scholarly literature, professional interviews, and the personal stories of people's journey to mental wellness. So, with that said, let's get started.
So go line your pockets with anything gold. 'Cause what good is a conscience if it can't be sold? And we are all simple miracles.
So, our guest today is Robin Welch. Many teachers, administrators of school districts, paraprofessionals, community members all throughout northwestern Ohio are probably all very familiar with her. I would dare I say that some would call her the GOAT, the greatest of all time, when it comes to behavioral coaching, intervention, and strategies. And thank you for doing this.
What a wonderful opportunity to share 40 years.
Oh my gosh.
Opportunities that I've had to work with parents and students and administrators, teachers throughout Northwest Ohio. And the impact that they have on my life has just been extraordinary.
Yeah. I wish everybody had that kind of an opportunity to, I don't want to say take your work home, but do you know what I mean?
Not everyone looks at behavior as an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I look at every life that I touch, every adult life that I touch, our kids' lives that get touched all over our communities and hopefully wherever they go. So I truly do see it as God's gift to me to be able to give back to others.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to be in the thousands of people, right?
I think I just looked at my last training cycle for crisis prevention, and I'm well over 3,000 trainees just in crisis prevention in the last 2 years.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. That's a good segue too. Tell us, can you describe to kind of the general public in a sense of what is crisis prevention intervention?
We call that CPI.
Yeah.
And crisis prevention is simply understanding levels of crisis and responding appropriately so we don't make situations worse. All situations start with a level of anxiety, and those tend to either get bigger or get less depending on the person's response in a situation. And that happens across the board. I try to make sure that staff understand that if you use this day in and day out in their life, if you use the language that it's something that you get really good at, and it's really taking our emotions out of a situation and focusing on what's real in the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I just as a therapist, I think like the word anxiety automatically means this clinical term of, you know, mental illness. And it's not the full story. I almost feel like anxiety, like that word has been hijacked by the clinical mental health model, but Everybody experiences levels of anxiety. I almost use the word nervousness, but I think anxiety still is a better fitting word because it's that, I don't know, like how would you describe it?
In crisis prevention, we talk about just a noticeable change in behavior.
Okay.
So if my normal behavior is calm and I'm getting ready for a softball game
Hmm.
and I'm super excited, that's a change in behavior. That's anxiety. Am I going to hit well? Am I going to play good defense? Are we going to win? That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad,
Right.
but it can become a crisis if I don't do any of those things well. That anxiety turns to more of a crisis situation than an excited situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, so I believe the four models go anxiety, then the levels kind of start increasing more in the CPI world to then defensive behaviors, right?
Oh, he's my model student. Absolutely. That next level is that verbal level, which is defensive. And then we have that risk behavior where, we start kind of physically acting out. And it doesn't mean that I'm beating somebody up or hurting somebody. It could just mean that I kick the table because I'm frustrated or throw my hat on the floor.
Yeah.
And those are risk behaviors. And if we don't respond appropriately, those things kind of get worse and they can get uglier. Or I can say, oh, I really see your frustration with that now. How can I help you? And then crisis always ends, always. No crisis lasts forever and ends in tension reduction.
Yeah.
And then we have to look at what's that therapeutic piece that we do? Did we look at all the situations? And that's where, as a behavior specialist, as a behavior consultant, that's where I come in, really taking apart what happened in the situation, because it's hard to rationally detach if you were the person that was just in that situation, particularly if it's a defensive situation where kids are verbally acting out. We tend to take that more personally.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And at least with my experience with like behaviors too, those involved always want to find a reason for the behavior, which I think is healthy. It's healthy to understand after the fact kind of what happened. But could you have done anything different in the moment, or could you have done anything before that happened? I don't know that that's always the case. Like sometimes we'll find out that a student was at another parent's house over the weekend and that they didn't take their medicine and that they were tired or, they were sick. And it's like, that doesn't mean that what you did by using CPI didn't work. It's sort of, I guess what I'm trying to say is CPI is not like it doesn't eliminate behaviors. It teaches you on how to manage behaviors. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's really what we're looking at, is using that model to make sure that we as adults aren't escalating situations in those situations. All of the things you were talking about, Michael, are part of CPI.
Mm-hmm.
There's still those precipitating factors. And the best situation, I'll give you a scenario that just happened this week.
Yeah.
So I have a young man who, the write-up that I get is suspended from school because he called an African American girl a racist name. And that's the end of the situation. But the precipitating factors are, this young man he's adopted. He comes from great trauma in his life. He has reactive attachment disorder. And he is particularly obsessed with anyone touching his things. So what the principal didn't look at, the teacher wasn't there in the classroom. It was that in-between time, teacher's outside, they're in the room. He set his things down next to a student he wanted to sit to. Another girl came, moved his things. He said he wasn't particularly nice when he said, "Don't touch my things."
Mm-hmm.
But then she started calling him names. He picked up his things, tried to put him back. She pushed him. I lovingly say, then he went into an NBA foul situation.
Yeah.
Then he realized he's embarrassed, so he calls her a name.
Mm-hmm.
None of those things would have occurred if someone didn't touch his things. What's important about all of that is he still gets a consequence for what he did.
Sure.
She'll still get a consequence for what she did, but it's an understanding that what drove that was this precipitating factor of trauma from long ago of him touching his things. My job is to help him understand that when someone touches his things, how can he respond
Yeah.
in that situation? Because you can't control when somebody's going to touch something of yours.
Right. Absolutely not. Yeah. And just the idea of, maybe over the last maybe 50 years, I'd say, maybe you would know more because you've been in the field for 40 years, but we are done with this punitive model. It's over, folks. Like we don't paddle kids anymore. We don't just send them home for every little thing. No one would be in school anymore. So for me, that tension reduction stage has been a real focus for me because there's a lot of value there. There's a lot of understanding to say, I'll give you an example today. It was 2:30 on a Friday. I have a student that has some pretty high developmental disability needs. Let's give him a test, right? It's perfect time for a test on a Friday after Halloween week, right? And he wasn't having it. He was done for the day. Removed him from the classroom because, again, I felt like it was important for the other kids to still be able to take their test, but, lightly kicking, lightly hitting, lightly pushing, just going at me. And, this job is not for everybody. It was interesting because I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with another teacher, and she's like, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up to be hit, and totally get that. I actually did, not that I want to get hit, but I think I can be calm enough in a state and then move into that tension reduction stage. And, Robin, it lasted 5 minutes and he was calm and sitting down, kind of went through that thing of like, hey buddy, it's Friday, man. I'm sure that you're just done with today. Is that right? And he's like, my brain's done working. And I'm like, I hear you, man. You're telling me your brain's done working. You just want to sit down. Like, we got 15 minutes left till school's out. Like, we're not going to escalate this anymore and force him to take this test. Monday's a new day. Let's try again then. But a peer mediation or adult mediation, tension reduction to me is, two middle school students are calling each other names. Let's not suspend them both. Let's go back to, well, why did you call them that? Or what's going on here? And have that conversation, I guess.
And over the years, I think that has been one of the greatest things that I've been able to add to school environments is natural and logical consequences for kids that help growth. Again, situations that were here. I had two boys that fought on the playground.
Mm-hmm.
Every day. There was some issue on the playground with them. And so I said, okay, here's the deal. You both are going to work together to write a book. And they wrote a book. They were studying about the food groups and how that impacts people in life. So they wrote a book called The Very Hungry Goldfish. One of them wrote it. One of them illustrated it. And it took them almost a month every day at recess. They didn't get to go outside. They worked with an adult to work on this book where they had to work together. We actually published the book and we made 80 copies of it. They took the book to a WSOS preschool and they read the books. They each read to 2 classrooms. Every kid at this preschool got a book that was written and illustrated by these 2 fifth-grade authors.
Wow.
And at graduation day, Michael, those 2 boys still didn't like each other. But after that particular consequence, they stopped fighting at recess.
There you go.
And we could have suspended them.
Mm-hmm.
They still would have fought at recess. They still wouldn't have learned any other skills. So teaching those skills in the midst of these day in and day out situations has been the greatest, what I have done that has made the greatest impact in an educational setting.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And it's those moments too where you truly change someone's life and change their behavior. It's not done through, punitive consequence. Typically, I'd say if that was the case, then our criminal justice system would be completely empty. It's not. So But I do have a lot more appreciation, I think, working in school districts with the time constraint, and, the teachers don't have time necessarily to sort of do this, but someone has to, you know?
And over the years, we've added and added social workers and counselors and behavior specialists to our school positions. You said something that's interesting, and I usually start any conversation that I have with staff with this question: when did you start teaching? How many of you started teaching before 1972?
Yeah.
And the answer at this point is always zero.
Right. Right.
Because 1972 became Public Law 94-142 that said we educate all students in our school buildings, in our school districts. So when teachers say to me, I didn't sign up for this, then you didn't know what you were signing up for when you became a teacher.
That's fair.
Because you knew that we were going to educate all kids in a building. And IDEA came out in the 90s, and we continued to change in the 2000s and the years subsequently that followed. We continue to put a greater and greater emphasis on keeping all children with their peers.
Yeah.
Every year, special ed law changes that says we can't seclude kids. We can't put them in. No one is going to become contributing community members by being punished, by being secluded, by not being educated with the general population. And so all teachers, when they say, I didn't sign up for this, then they probably weren't looking at what they were signing up for.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if it's just a different way of thinking of, like, you don't teach the subject, you teach the student. It seems simple to say that, but it's, a lot of people will say, well, I became a teacher because I love science. Well, that's great, but, like, what's that got to do with teaching kids or teaching, anyone for that matter? Even, like colleges and stuff. Like, you want to teach people, and that takes. I hate the word patience. I don't know how you feel about the word patience, but I'm not a big fan of patience, because I don't think that's really what we have. Does that make sense?
I think I used the word capacity instead of patience.
What was the word?
Capacity.
Yeah, there you go. That's a better word.
Because I jokingly say, I asked God for patience and he gave me my bonus son.
Yeah,
I haven't been asking for much since then. But I also ask, I say it's the capacity to reach every kind of kid.
Yep.
The kid that doesn't like science, the kid that doesn't understand math, the kid that can't read, the kid that can't sit still. It's a capacity to do that. And I understand that we came in to teach a subject.
Mm-hmm.
And in all fairness to teachers, much of this changed. Their capacity changed when legislators said the testing results are not part of your evaluation.
Yeah.
That changed their willingness to work with kids.
I would agree. Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely agree. And I haven't met a principal yet. I'm sure they're out there, but, like, they're trying to be empathetic towards the teacher too, because they actually know that teacher, and that this test result isn't a reflection of their efforts, but God, it's such a sticky situation,
Yeah, I mean, and I respect the staff, and it's tough day in and day out.
Yeah.
It's why we don't allow parents who are adopting kids to have 10 special need kids in their room or in their house, because we know how much that takes from you, and nobody has that much capacity.
Right.
And yet we'll take 10 special needs kids and put them in one teacher's classroom and expect them to have that capacity. And so it is a tough situation sometimes, particularly you'll have 1 year where you have a lot of needs in that particular grade level.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll have another year where people just fly by and love what they're doing.
Yep.
And those are the times where we need extra people to help us through.
Definitely. So in your 30 years, I mean, are there a couple of stories that sort of stand out to you that were influential to you? I mean, I guess what I'm looking for is maybe some, and I'm sure you have many of them, but just to give you a second to think about some stories that, like, left a lasting impact on you personally, would you say?
Michael, that's probably one of the most difficult situations that you could give me
Of course.
because every kid
Yeah.
that has ever put their hand in mine and walked one step with me has made a lasting impact on me. But I mean, can I give you situations? Absolutely.
Yeah. Give me something that you think someone else needs to hear.
So I have a young man who, great parents. Like sometimes we look at homes and we say, "Oh, they live in such a bad home." And he came from a wonderful setting. I don't know that I know anybody that lives in a typically normal kind of home anymore.
Right.
But he has great parents. From a young age, he struggled. Finally, we came up with a diagnosis of autism. We know that that is, again, back to your anxiety, a disability that is riddled with anxiety.
Yeah.
It is riddled with social difficulties and sitting in situations. We continued to work. We didn't give up. We did natural and logical consequences for kids, and we continued to work. And when people wanted to get rid of him, and I said, "No, we'll make a new plan and we'll follow the plan." And Guy, you're not giving up either. And it was hard for parents when I said he made this decision. It's 20 degrees. He's still going to walk the 3 miles home.
Yep.
And, mom followed him in the car and we did it. And that young man graduated from the University of Kentucky and their arson investigation program. I couldn't have lived in a prouder moment in my life.
Yeah. Oh, it just shows that like, and back to kind of CPI and the behavior model, like I always call it like a working plan. Okay. Because if you're going to complain and bitch to me about this not working, then let's change it. But if you're not going to do anything, then we're not going to see any change. So it's these live working plans. And I sort of I used to call it drying up. So when a plan dries up, we got to come up with a new one. And it just shows you that it can help people get through and be productive in society.
Absolutely. So we look at it, and sometimes success isn't necessarily measured in that. I have another young man who the messages that I get at 2:00 in the morning
Oh,
on
God.
Facebook Messenger are the ones that continue to still motivate me to work when I don't need to work now. Why do I keep working 10 years after I supposedly retired? Because I get these messages. And, young man who said, I just want to thank you for all that you did for me, that I'm a good dad now and I have a job now and I am the person I am today because of the love and affection that you gave to me.
Oh, yeah.
And if you saw the spelling, it actually said love and affection that you gave. And I don't think there was a word spelled correctly in the message,
Yeah.
but it didn't matter. He was driven by the fact that there was an adult in his life that no matter what he did, still cared for him and didn't close a door, but continued to walk with him.
Yeah.
And school was always difficult for him. And, we praised the day that he got that diploma.
Yeah. Yeah. It's those kids that, there are kids that just kind of go through school and they have a great upbringing. They get good grades. They got friends. That's awesome. I got really nothing to comment on that, but there's that 5%, that 10%, the 15%. I think it's growing where, they don't have a dad in their life and just being a male adult role model is important to them, or being a female that is, a little stern and sort of has some kind of, tougher expectations for you. I used to kind of, get upset at the teacher who was just so strict. Oh my gosh, their standards are just out of this world. You gotta, stop at the hallway and do that thing. But I actually have now grown to appreciate them because that's what life is. We want to pitter patter or sort of tiptoe around this behavior, and then it explodes, and then we don't know what to do, to where we need to kind of call it out. I mean, and now's the time to do that when they're in school, is to have those tough situations, like what you said, where the boy chose to walk home for 3 miles. We're not going to stop him. We're going to let him realize what 3 miles walking in the snow feels like. It's the best way for him to learn, you know?
And I think that the accountability piece, and
Yeah.
when we talk to kids about, I've always said, I want you to be a contributing community member. What does that look like? I want my kid to be able to live next door to you.
Yep.
What does that look like? It looks different for everyone.
Totally.
And, there was a time where they bought shirts that said the road to college, and everybody in the school district was supposed to wear that. And you're not a good behavior specialist unless you have a little bit of what ails you. And I refuse to wear that shirt because I have lots and lots of kids who I want a shirt that says the road to happiness, the road to success. And that looks different. That looks different for all of us. And if we don't hold everybody to white middle class values, if I'm willing to be thrilled that not everyone goes to college because somebody picks up my trash and fixes my car and gives me food at McDonald's.
Right.
If I understand that those are the pieces that can fit for other people.
Yeah.
And I think the kids saw that, again, they had a champion because they weren't going to college. And let's talk about what that looks like.
Yeah. It's important for all educators to have an open mind to believing in your craft and what you do for humanity. And for someone like me who doesn't have kids, I just have a different viewpoint of it. And I think you said it best, where I look at kids as future community members, even just during, what was it? Yeah. During trick or treat, I'm over at a friend's house because, I don't have kids, and, we're outside handing candy out to the neighborhood kids. And this guy came up to us, and he had 2 little kids, and I kind of recognized him, but I wasn't quite sure if it was him, but I remembered him. And years and years ago, I used to do this juvenile at-risk behavioral group thing, where I would meet with kids that were on probation. And I pretty much had free range as to what I wanted to talk to them about, but I would pick different things like self-esteem and self-worth, nothing about the crime that they committed or, this is how you need to behave. It's like, what do you want to do with your life? You can't talk to people like how you don't want to be talked to and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I always wondered if I made a difference. And here we go, probably 10 years later, this dude's coming up to me with his kid getting candy, and he says, "Hey, thanks for doing those groups." And it just brought me to tears that night to know that, like, here again is a full-grown adult, lives in my neighborhood. He's got kids of his own, and I made a difference. Or at least I like to think that, like, he sort of woke up and realized that he's my neighbor now. He's someone that's in my community. And that's what it's about.
And I think that truly is. And I think finally for me, if I bring this thing full circle, Michael.
Sure.
Is I was at a funeral.
Okay.
So I'm at a funeral, and someone says to me, "Robin, are you still out there saving the world one kid at a time?" And, what a wonderful way to be thought of. You're saving the world one kid at a time. And I said, absolutely. I keep trying to retire, but there's some kid out there that calls my name and brings me back in. And I had an adult teacher who's still working, and she said, I want you to understand that you haven't just saved the world one kid at a time, but you've saved it one teacher at a time, one parent at a time, one bus driver at a time, one adult at a time, that you've given us the same love and affection and the same capacity that you gave to every student. She's bawling, I'm crying. We're both crying harder about kids than we are about that. And I think for me, that put a lid on everything I've done. I've seen what I've done for kids. But the reason I left a classroom and left teaching, which I loved so much, was that there was more that I could do by teaching teachers and by saving kids from teachers who didn't understand, who had the capacity but didn't know how to use it. I've done more in this than I ever did in the classroom. And I still continue to work with kids in classroom pieces, but it just understanding that just life teaching is wherever you go, whatever you do.
Oh, well, I love that. And Robin Welch, I can't thank you enough for coming in and doing this. You're the GOAT. You're the greatest of all time. I don't know how else to put it. I hope that you're able to come in again and share some more stories with us. I understand you're going to go out to dinner with some friends and have a great time. And thank you for doing this.
It's been an honor and a pleasure to be here, Michael, and to work with you. And hopefully you'll have me back again. Thanks so much.
Will do. Thanks.
Hold each other close, walking in the rain. You were like a picture and I the frame. You were like the air and I a plane.
By the way, at the Wellness Project, we have merchandise. That's right, all mental health awareness themed products. We've got artwork, we've got shirts, we've got hats, we've got candles. We're gonna have one for like anxiety awareness, depression awareness, wellness awareness, which is actually out right now. That's right, you can get your own wellness awareness candle. What does it smell like, right? You have to come in and check it out. But if you hit me up on Facebook, or you can email me and I can give you that information. And thank you for your support.
There's a million places I could go, but so you.
If you get a chance and you're in the Port Clinton, Ohio area, stop by the Yellow House Bakery, located on Madison Street in Port Clinton, Ohio. The Yellow House Bakery is passionate about a few things: simplicity, accessibility, community, family well-being, and, of course, baked goods. They aim to connect by creating good-for-the-soul baked goods using only high-quality, simple ingredients. And each month, they also offer a new, unique baked good. And trust me, they sell out quickly, so make sure you get there early.